Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. Our time together is going to be about 15 minutes, give or take, and it's probably not going to sound like the normal SEO podcast. All right, there's no interviews, just my raw take on events, mindsets, and sharing my current testing. Normally, you don't need to take notes because this is not about hacks or a clever way to hit that FOMO part of our SEO brains. And you know what I'm talking about. Now, what I've come to appreciate about what I do is despite how long I've been in SEO, there is no sort of sitting and putting my feet up and acting like an executive SEO. I'm in the trenches every single day. There are no protected interests in the world of SEO testing, and the only thing that is sacred is the desire to learn what is going on and what is working. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 44 of Confessions of an SEO. This one is called the Google Halloween Update That Never Was. Now that title will make sense as we go. It's based on an article published on Search Engine Roundtable. Thank you to Ahrefs, the sponsor of this episode. With Ahrefs Webmaster Tools, you get access to 3 free tools for your website. You get Web Analytics to provide insights about your website's traffic data, visitors, and sources in real time. If you understand the value of now versus the basically 48-hour delay in most Google products. The other one is a site technical audit tool, which scans your website for 170 plus common technical and on-page SEO issues and helps you fix them. And a site explorer, which gives you SEO metrics on the pages and keywords that bring in the most organic traffic to your site and who links to your site. It's always free to get started with Ahrefs. There's a link in the description. Go ahead and check it out. Last week, I talked about the work Sean Anderson is doing to create a reference guide to what the big deal was really about, the leak of Google's internal content warehouse API documentation. That is a mouthful. In April 2024, I published my findings on helpful content, which demonstrated with data and observations that helpful content is a topical measurement of a domain's collection of pages on that domain. Some of my testing friends responded to the work was, well, I guess we won't know really unless Google confirms it. Well, then Google confirmed it via the link of this documentation warehouse in less than a month. And now Sean is breaking things down, working to explain more of what is in those documents. And while we may use different words, he's describing the basis of my analysis that domains are getting a site focus score and a site radius score. And if you get too far from your topic, your domain gets penalized. In other words, there is only unhelpful content that system notices. So yes, check it out. There are links to where you can download his analysis, where he's putting things together, and it's a work in progress. He's fitting it into his day job as an SEO tool developer using Google Sheets to create intelligence out of the data. You can always find the most recent episode of Confessions on confessionsofanseo.com. Subscribe on whichever platform you get your podcasts. It's a great way to both support this podcast and help others find it. Okay. Today's chat is going to be about those update hounds. They look at volatility and assume all volatility is bad and no volatility of any kind is better than high volatility. I actually hold, surprise, the opposite view. High volatility, in my experience and testing, is good because content is getting flowed into the served index, which is what we want. And the low or no volatility, the data indicates that serving, that part that Google shows to us, that served index, is shut off because they're doing something with the data before they open it back up again. So the article in question was postulating that due to various high levels of volatility and some ranking swings, there must, therefore, be an unannounced update. And since it was so close to Halloween, even trying to make a joke about it and call it the Google Halloween update. Cute? Yes. Accurate? No. My spouse, Adam, always jokes, but mostly serious when he says the end of Western civilization was the creation of the 24-hour news cycle. Now, you know that anything will count as news if you know there's a lot of people out there that need to also write something that will also count as news and use that as their excuse to write yet another article about, in this case, some unannounced update, and including in there some version of shame on Google. I guess it's not really fair to call anybody out on this. It's not like there are a lot of us sitting there watching Googlebots and Chrome builds and indexed page report dates and tracking them to uncover patterns. But if there's anybody else out there doing that, in addition to me, you probably know how to reach me. I'd love to talk to you. I've been doing this particular activity for most every day for more than 4 years. And I naively thought, if SEOs just knew these patterns, they wouldn't waste time griping over some phantom update or scaring other people. Now, at some point, and believe me, back in the day when Penguin and Panda hit, we're talking 2011, 2012, we were all flinchy. Anytime anyone used those P words in a sentence. But at some point, it made sense to me that we should get more informed so that Chicken Littles don't get to just say the sky is falling and everybody reflexively running for cover. So for the sake of data, I feel like William Shatner, let's take a look at the claims expressed in this article. Now, Barry Schwartz wrote it, and pretty much someone reached out to him and said, something has to be up, they claimed. My traffic disappeared on October 27th. So in this article, I'll put the link in the description, don't worry. The October dates in question, you don't have to write this down, I'll just tell you. The 7th and the 8th, the 15th, 16th, and 17th, and the 27th, 28th, 29th, all the way through into October 31st on Halloween. It just so happens that my tracking data, which I can go back and reference and look at, it's a fairly pedestrian spreadsheet tab, collection of tabs, 226, today, 227 of them at this point, and they're all in the same Google spreadsheet. So if you take that and divide by 52 weeks, you can see it's been collected for a while. So I went back to October 7th and 8th, 2025, because I have all the other years. But October 7th, there was a Search Console indexed page report update in Search Console. Now that alone can count as an explanation. If you know what that is, Google is flowing at each one of these updates a minimum of 3 days of processed content. And that kind of goes from not being found in the served index to being found in the served index, and it kind of all gets pushed through. And that's what we can see when we're searching. Now, typically, volatility does go down right before that update. And once that update is flushed through and complete, volatility typically goes up. So that's just one data point, right? So maybe I was just lucky. So I took a look at October 15th through 17th. Well, it just so happens on the 14th, late in the day, there was an indexed page report update. And then on the 16th, another index page report. Now that is rare to have 2 page reports updated in Search Console within the span of 2 days. It is not normal. But it is also not a sign that Google is broken and not a sign of a core update. All right, so now we've kind of had 2 for 2, right? Two sets of these days for an alternate explanation of the volatility and page ranking variations. So what about October 27th through Halloween? Well, I went to take a look, and guess what? On the 27th, there was also yet another indexed page report. Now that explained the 27th, but alone by itself, that does not explain the heating up part. So to quote the Ginzu Knives guy, but wait, I have more data. Let's go to the general crawling data log that I have. And it often can explain volatility or ranking swings. Let's find out, right? So I call this document my bot to site sheet. I track 3 sites, 2 test sites, and 1 live production site for a business client. You'll never guess what I found. Now, what I'm about to say is only going to make sense if you either know or have some inkling of an understanding that Google updates the Chrome builds on their mobile Google bots. Now, these are the first ones that ever hit our new content. You don't see a desktop hit it first. It's always the mobile. Now they say, oh, that's the mobile first indexing. Yeah, but it's now everybody's site. Okay, so we know that they do this. And what happens is, as they do this, they end up having 2 Chrome versions, of the mobile Googlebot. So they have 2 of them running when things are normal, when they're not in some sort of test mode. What that looks like in server logs is the newest Chrome Googlebot makes a pull of the very simple HTML. If you don't know what HTML is, it's the source code of the page. There's nothing fancy about it. It's just a quick whoosh, up it goes. Now, the next oldest Chrome Googlebot, and this is the one that used to be the new one, they seem to either, and I don't know if we should say they get promoted or they get demoted, but they start doing what's called rendering crawls. Now, there's a lot of JavaScript involved in that. Hence the rendering. And it's, they crawl the pieces of a page. So like you might see 1 or 2 of the newest Chrome, pulling the HTML. And then you will see the next oldest Chrome pulling all the pieces. If you're in WordPress, it'll be numbers of little files in there. And what they do is they take those back to the render machine. And all that stuff that's in the JavaScript files is converted to HTML. And I'm going to speak very simply, but this is a very complex method of basically decoding our pages. And Google uses protocol buffers where they take, the source HTML and the JavaScript, they convert to HTML, and they kind of shove it all in one document, and they score it based on the information gathered by both of these mobile Google bots for that page. Now, the bots themselves are not scoring. I hope you get that. They pull in the pieces, and then the rules are then applied. So you might be thinking, well, what happens if Google is not in this normal mode, but in a testing phase? So I'm glad you asked that. It looks like what we have. The newest Chrome build during this time in question, the 27th through Halloween, that newest Chrome is performing both types of crawls, the HTML and JavaScript rendering crawls. So previous to that time, we had the 2. Now we're down to the 1, and it's doing double duty. Now, in this test phase, we have noticed that pages will just suddenly drop out of the SERPs, the search engine results pages, kind of like we've heard it described as Google rolls the version of the index back and then re-rolls the dice, in this case, the Googlebot crawls. Now, we can only surmise that they have some method to compare between what data they had before and what data they just crawled, because it's not everybody's page, right? It's only probably a sampling. Well, remember, and this is going to go back to that leaked API, warehouse API documentation. In that, we learned, and this is where I think it's likely that this is why Google keeps the latest 20 versions of every page they crawl. And so if they are dropping a page out, then they probably crawl it again and compare. But I'm speculating on that, right? But it makes sense. It's a possible explanation about why these pages disappear and why they come back when nobody does anything. So when this happens, of course, Google doesn't leave a note in your search console when they do this. They'll just ghost your page and its data. And then when you are frustrated that your page disappeared without you doing anything, it'll get put back where it was before they took it out. So in addition to HTML and JavaScript crawling with the same Chrome build, another thing, they just updated the legacy desktop crawler on November 2nd. And that is now the same Chrome build as the newest Chrome build, the one that's doing all the HTML crawling and JavaScript crawling, which means testing is likely complete for that version of Chrome. And that's the pattern. The desktop updates to the latest Chrome is the sign that they are getting ready to move on to the next version of Chrome and then start this phase of testing all over again. So getting back to the Google Halloween update that never was, when our industry is ready to actually explore why there is volatility, maybe consider volatility is just a way to show movement, and not every jump in volatility movement means that it's an update. It doesn't mean it goes up, doesn't mean it goes down. It just means things are moving. And as an Core update, if we understand the biggest SEO testing company there is, I'll give you a hint. Their first name starts with a G. It is their job to test and confirm that these Chrome builds are working and rendering and not failing like they did in a previous Chrome build. Now, I know an update sounds, much more dramatic. It's very sexy, but frankly, so is informed reporting. And if you like this kind of breakdown of what's going on, I do report this activity in my crawl or no crawl indexation group. And for the higher tiers in Indexilla, which is my indexing technology, now that the API is kaput, customers in there get this information with advice on, for instance, how many times should you resubmit your URLs? Because sometimes Google just isn't prioritizing crawl for content because they also test. Well, that's it for me this week. Thank you for being a listener. If you have questions or comments about today's topic, you can reach out and text me at 512-222-3132. Indexilla is my indexer tool. If you can find it, it'll be at indexilla.io. Now more than ever, AI makes the indexation of your content into Google essential. Do not leave it to chance. Thanks again to Ahrefs for sponsoring this episode. Remember, it's always free to get started with Ahrefs Webmaster Tools. All right. Thank you for listening. And until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.